Commission meeting for Tuesday, September 20th, 2022 to order. Mary Ellen, can you please call the roll?
Present.
Here. Here.
Here. Here. Present. Here.
Here. I did hear from Tessa. She said that she wasn't going to be able to make it tonight, but we do have a quorum. So with that, if we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
The United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can all remain standing for a moment of silent reflection, please. Thank you. All right, everyone's had a chance to review the draft minutes from our last meeting on September 6th. Any comments, additions, revisions, anything? If not, I'm looking for a motion to approve.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Salk with a motion. We have a second.
Second.
Commissioner Clark with a second. Awesome. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Let's move on to item number 7, Commissioner discussion. Any subcommittees? Commissioner Clark.
I have a POCD implementation committee update. Our next meeting is September 27th at 5 p.m. here, right here in the Municipal Center. So in this meeting, we'll be coming together to review where each person has gotten on their assigned list of action items. Each person has been assigned a leader that they're going to be following up with. So next time I'll be able to report on that. But one note I'm excited to report is that out of almost 200 action items, we're down to only 50 left that we have to verify. And of those, I do anticipate some of them may have been done already. So it's very exciting. The document has been put to work. So I really feel good and thankful for this committee.
That's great. Just in time for us to go back and start a whole new list.
That's
We got a couple of years, so, but yeah, thank you, Jen. Appreciate that. Any other subcommittees with a report? Commissioner Volpe.
So I was able to touch base with Mary Ellen. I'll be sending her my info. Will be on the agenda next time to present on food trucks. I know, finally.
There we go.
Jeez.
I'm sorry?
Samples?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, I have all the food trucks coming
We
to the
can't-
parking lot.
We
You get to
can't
meet
make a
each one.
decision without
No, I think
knowing.
you'll find the information interesting. It's a bit of statistical data based off of surrounding towns. So like I said, I just want another pair of eyes on it, and then I can present at the next meeting.
Great.
Super duper.
Anyone else? Peter, you have the floor tonight, so if you want to talk about race review, we're going to do that in about
Yeah, well, that's just
So-
it, is that
so-
we're going to be on the business meeting. We're first on the agenda there. So we won't be looking for adoption tonight, but we will be looking for action tonight. And so with that, we will, as a precursor to what's going to be presented. on the business meeting.
We'll get there. Anyone else? So I'll take a moment just to talk about the Economic Strike Force Development Subcommittee. We met last week, I think it was last week, and talked about a couple different things. One of the questions, as we were talking, one of the questions that I get often from members and from other people in town is, you guys approved this application or that application, how come nothing's happening there? When is this going to happen? What's going on? So I thought that I would just take a moment to review some of the things that are going on now, some of the things that are starting up, and some of those things that are really going to be happening sometime soon. So Beaman Corman property out here on North Main Street, everyone should see that there's a foundation there. The understanding from Lou Perillo and Mark Lovely is that they have building number 1 fully leased out and ready to be occupied the beginning of 2023. So that's that. The auto car wash on the corner of Meriden and Meriden Walker Turnpike that we approved a couple years ago. They're out there doing construction right now. If you drive by there, you see the backhoes out there right now. Ronaldo's, you might notice, again, on North Main Street, that it's been gated off. There's been some environmental issues that have been raised there, and I think that they're working at resolving those. Is that accurate, Jim? I assume that that was the case. So that's moving forward. Dunkin' Donuts in Plantsville. Anyone who uses that Dunkin' Donuts will know, from what I've heard, it closed down this past week.
Yeah.
And they're starting to do the renovation there. Again, that was an approval for a drive-up and walk-up facility only with some renovations to the building and the site plan. The Rite Aid, soon to be a 7-Eleven, we think, out on Queen Street. They're getting ready to do the demo on that. I think that they hit a clinch with their original demo contractor and have engaged and contracted another demo contractor. So you'll see that moving forward as well. Jersey Mike's / Starbucks down on Queen Street. Jersey Mike's opened up last week. And the Starbucks, I think that the interior of that building is being modeled right now, so that should be open sometime soon. We've talked about Live Well, which is the big facility out in the Plantsville part of town. We talked about that a little bit. And as I finish that up, probably the most exciting piece of news is the old Pratt Whitney building is currently fully leased and occupied right now. So that's all good news too. But again, as I said, it's good to see that you see this stuff going forward after we approve it. And sometimes it takes a little time, understandably. But with the pandemic especially, I think that was something that was held things up. But I'm glad to see that those things are moved. I also will mention Grill 110 up by the Marshalls there. So that's obviously been open for a while. If you haven't attended or gone there, I would encourage you to do so. I've done it a couple of times and been very, very satisfied with it. So with that, if there's nothing else, we'll move on to our next agenda items. We have no public hearing. I'm not going to read the preamble that I usually read because it really pertains to public hearings more than anything else. But item 9A is a review of the zoning regulations. Glenn from Planmetrics is here. He's going to give us a presentation. There were items that were provided to members earlier today. I encourage you to look at it. I don't know that Glenn's going to dive deep into those because some of them are quite voluminous.
We'll talk about
We have one that I think is 270 something pages long.
That's our regs.
But as Peter said, at the end of this, we will be looking to see if we can get an approval for phase 2 of this process, which is needed in order for Mary Ellen to bring that to the town council, who ultimately would approve that. But we'll talk about that. Glenn's done and we have all our Q&A done. So Glenn, take it away.
Yeah, I just as
Or
a,
Peter,
as
I'm
a no worries. So the committee last met with Glenn and Mary Ellen yesterday at 4, which is why you got our documents today. So it was literally yesterday that we finally met Glenn and went over some of the final things with that. And so this presentation summarizes what we talked about. You have in your packet his audit report, as well as kind of a full look at what the regs would look like, as well as a proposal for phase 2. But we'll get there. And so with that, Glenn will go through what we've done, where we are now, and where we're going to go. So with that, Glenn, if you'll take it away.
Peter. I'm excited to be back in front of the commission. It may surprise you to realize that we.
Glenn, can you talk to the mic, please? Get the stuff to here.
Geez, I was all excited about how much space I had on the worktop here, but I guess not anymore.
There you go. There you go.
Not anymore. Yeah, there we go. So again, I'm excited to be here. We met back in May and actually kicked off this process in terms of talking about what we wanted, hope to achieve as part of it, in terms of looking at the zoning regulations and then figuring out what sorts of issues existed in the regulations and what next steps could be. That work took place over the summertime. In August, met with the regs committee. We had a deliverable, which is in your report tonight, which is sort of the audit findings.
If you just move the mic a little closer.
You
Yeah.
can-
Thanks.
That's better.
Okay.
don't know yet.
It's actually,
Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. No, I'm just trying to figure out how to prop it up or me to get smaller and quick notice or something. I apologize. And tonight is where for an update for the commission overall. The things I'd like to go through tonight with you is the findings from the audit report and some of the recommendations that came out of that work. As was indicated by Peter Chair, I prepared a document which is 200 something pages, a PDF version of your current regulations reorganized with the user-friendly features, click links and things like that in the document. So if you have tops or screens you want to play with it while we're talking here tonight, feel free to do so. So I didn't expect you to read that. I don't want to say it's a useless document. It shows you how the user-friendly features will work, but much of the text in the regulations has not been cleaned up yet. And I think that's sort of the issues that we're talking about a little bit later. Talk about steps here and then have a discussion with the commission overall. I think the first step is to go through the audit report. Let me just say, and
Glenn,
sort of,
can I just interrupt you for a second? Just for members of the audience, items, if you're here for items 9B or 9C, both of those items will be tabled tonight. So I don't know, I don't want you sitting here waiting for us to do something and then find out, in minutes when Glenn's done that there's
think
nothing
I could be
going
done
on
in
there
10
and you
minutes?
wasted 10 minutes.
it's going to be entertaining.
there's your challenge.
You are rather
No pressure,
concise.
Glenn, no.
I'll make that happen. I can.
That was
you very
subtle, Mr. Chair. Get done in 10 minutes.
So let me just say overall that as part of the work, the overall impression I would like to leave with you is there are a lot of issues in the regulations. I think the commission may not see all of them because you don't get into the sort of nitty gritty details, but there are situations, I think, and we'll talk about those as we go. I think some of the key issues that I found in the regulations overall is the user-friendly organization. We have situations that related provisions are scattered throughout the regulations, and this creates uncertainty on the part of potential applicants because they read one line or one paragraph, they think they found a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, and suddenly there's something 7 sections away that says, but you can't do that. And this it creates a lack of confidence in the regulations, et cetera, because it's not, people feel they have to read everything in the regulations to understand it. As a result, they call staff, which creates additional issues. And I think that this can be addressed by having an intuitive and user-friendly organization. I think another thing we've talked about in the regulations we're calling flippity-doo-dah, which is that the R80 zone is sort of the base. The R40 refers to the R80. 2025 refers to the R40. If you actually want to figure out what you can do in the R12 zone, you got to go through 4 or 5 zones before it to be able to figure out whether or not you can do it. And this is very frustrating for people along the way. And I think we can solve that problem very easily. That type of approach probably did in the 50s. Most communities haven't done that in 50 or 60 years. So I think it might be time to bring the regulations into the new century. I also think that the regulation format is a little unfriendly right now. It's inflexible. If we decided we wanted a brand new section on spaceports, where are we going to put that in the regulation? It's going to go as section 19, and then we're going to want to adopt a regulation on camels. Well, that's section 20. So the organization continues to get diluted and inappropriate over time because it's not a hierarchical framework overall. I think there's a number of regulation provisions in the regulations which are unclear. I've been doing zoning for more years than I care to point out. I can't understand some of the provisions in the regulations. So it's very hard for people to really understand what the situation is. Again, the fear is that there's a gotcha someplace. People think that they can do something, there's a landmine or another situation that means that it can't happen. And I think we can solve that issue, again, through organization in the regulations. There are some important provisions and sections in the regulations: lighting, access management, signage, stormwater management, et cetera, that only apply in certain zoning districts. And some are important enough that really should be evaluated for application town-wide. If we're going to have illumination standards, why does it only appear in this zone and next to it. So I think that we can update our regulations for technical and other standards. Some of the provisions are not up to date. We do have stormwater provisions in the West Street Business Zone, which reflect what's known as low impact development or green infrastructure, but it does apply in other locations. And this is really helpful, I think, for the community. And we should look at ways to carry that town-wide. And other situations like lighting illumination standards, completes, which is really bicycles and pedestrians and those things as well. I think the procedure sections are not up to date. There's some disjointedness with what the statutes currently say, court decisions that affect certain provisions in the regulations that need to be updated. And I think the process isn't as clear as it should be. So for an applicant who's not as experienced as some of the people in the room here tonight, or even a neighbor, or something going on in the neighborhood, they want to understand this is how the commission works. It's very hard to figure out from the regulations, and we could make that better. So some of the recommendations that I wanted to bring to you for your consideration is to organize the regulations around the four main aspects of a set of regulations. The first of which is every property in town is in a zone. Each zone allows uses. So we're going to organize the zones and uses together. There's going to be standards for things like parking, signage, landscaping, erosion and sediment control. Those are in that section. Is how you actually get a permit to start construction for the things that the chair pointed out in terms of projects underway. And then lastly, we do need to have a regulatory framework that says, look, if it's not permitted, it's prohibited. This is the definition of the word grading and the other stuff. So when people understand this organization, as they get into the regulations, pretty soon, right off the bat, they can get right to the section or sections that they need to know. The benefit of this is the star on the right-hand side. Once the regulations are organized in a user-friendly way, we can facilitate navigation between the sections. So now you can proceed through the regulations by finding your thing. Any click links will take you to the next section, which will take you to section. And before you know it, you've got the answers that you were looking for. I think this is a graphic intended to show that the current regulations are need to be defragmented. There is bits and pieces of stuff all over the place. And if we can get those colors together so that all of the things related to Epic are in one place, we're going to be ahead of the game. And this probably dates back to early Windows 95, this graphic, in terms of the concept of defragging, but it works for me. I think we have a situation where we have regulations in the definitions, and that creates a whole bunch of conflicts. Because, in fact, what is a bed and breakfast, for example, right? What is the nature of it? It's lighting for transients, and it's an accessory use to a dwelling. So it's generally owner occupied. Your definition contains other standards about the service of meals, the number of rooms, etc. And those are actually regulations. So I think the best way to approach situations like this is define what a bed and breakfast is, then have the standards that say this is what you can do with a bed and breakfast. And again, it's much clearer for people. I was surprised reading through your regulations. Your standards for accessory uses, anybody know where it is in your current regs? It's in the definition section. I can tell you, it's the last place I have to look for whether or not I can have an accessory structure on my property. Again, as I had mentioned earlier, to update some of the regulatory provisions and update the regulatory procedures, I think are other important things. So as part of my work on the audit, I could see how to do this, but I realize it's hard with words to explain how the regulations might be organized. So this is what the 200-page, 12-megabyte material is that was sent to you. Don't spend a lot of time searching it because hopefully it'll be quickly replaced by better sections. But it's organized around zones and uses, standards, procedures, and regulatory framework. So if you are in a residential zone or industrial zone, right here, you'll see that's the section I need to go to get started with. Standards, again, parking, lighting, illumination, etc. Procedures are related to zoning permit, site plan, special permit, zone change, tax change. And Southington also has a provision of special exceptions, which are done by the ZBI. And all of that is spelled out there. So this is how the regulations will be set up. You may have noticed from the sort of the table of contents that regulatory framework has been moved to the back, and what we're going to propose for the inside front cover is what I'm going to call here the start page. This explains to people the basic organization of the regulations. There's a link at the top here to the zoning map. You can go look at the zoning map, figure out what zone your property is in. From there, you can figure out whether you need to go to the section on residential zones, business zones, industrial zones, etc. Then you can click to the other sections related to use standards or parking, lighting, etc. Section 8 is also how you would look at the permit requirements, and these are all click links on the inside front cover. So you can find where you need to go and get to it quickly. Then you'll notice right here on page 1, you're right into residential zones, which is 80% land in town is residentially. And right here on the right-hand sidebar, we have created click links. These colored boxes here are click links to sections of the regulations.
The thing on the bottom, you click something so we can't see all the
Oh,
colors.
I did. Look at that. Thank you, Peter. So I was so excited about what I was talking about. I didn't even notice here. So clearly this doesn't work in the PDF, but you could get to any other section of the regulations by one click to the chapter. And this is also the very first page here of the residential zones chapter, and you'll see at the top that box that contains the subsections. So with another link, if you said to me, well, what are the principal uses permitted in the R40 zone? Click 1 is residential, click 2 is permitted uses or principal uses, and you're right there at the next table that now starts to explain to you what you can do in terms of different uses in the zoning districts. The tables are set up, the rows are uses, the columns are zones, the letter codes are described here at the top, and whether it's permitted by a zoning permit, a site plan, a special permit, a special exception, or little x says it's not allowed at all in that zoning district. So people can now go through and look at and say, well, I'd like to do this. Oh, look, it's only permitted in this zone. Or this is the use I want to do. Is it or is it not permitted in this zone? And the other thing I think which is important in this table is hard to tell here, but right above this black line, he says conversion of existing dwelling to a two-family subject to section 5B1. And that's going to be a click link. So if you say, well, that's what I want to do, boom, click on it. It's going to take you right to the standards. So this is the organizational framework, which I think is going to work well for us for principal uses and structures. Follow that up again in this format for accessory uses and structures. There's going to be provisions that are organized for area and dimensional standards for the different zoning districts that apply. A key section of the regs would be use-related provisions. So when we say conversion to a two-family, subject to, click on that, it's going to take you to section 5, and this is where we have a hierarchical structure here that identifies all of the different things that you could do and the standards that apply. This is where I think we'll spend quite a bit of time with the regulation committee working through and making sure that these standards are in fact current, appropriate, and relevant, because they'll be clearly defined in this section of the regulations. And once we've done that, we'll come back to the commission with the recommendations. Again, standard same approach that we talked about. The procedure section. This is an important section. People say, yes, you figured out whether or not what you want to do is permitted. The question is, how do you get it approved? Professionals sort of understand what a site plan or a special permit would be, but residents often do not. But we're also talking about including flow charts in the regulation that would explain on an application of this type. The first column on the left there is the time frames when the clock starts ticking on an application deadline. What is the applicant's responsibility to do? What is the commission and staff's responsibility? The actual references to the regulation in terms of the section number to look at, and identifies who's supposed to do what when. And you can see here on this graphic, this red dashed box to let the public know that's the part of the process where the public can participate. You can't participate during the receipt or until the public hearing or after the public hearing goes. There's quite a bit of information that we can share with the picture. In the definitions section, we're looking to group the definitions together so that the words principal and accessory go together, the difference between building and a use. Here, explanatory illustration in terms of yard locations. How does a corner lot differ than a pie-shaped lot in terms of the location of yard setbacks and related items? And the commission doesn't really get into these sorts of issues, but in the day-to-day mechanics of a set of regulations, issues are quite important. So that's the overall findings of an indication, example, if you will, of how this be addressed in the regulation reorganization. And I think tonight we're here also to talk with you about next steps. When we got together back in May, we anticipated that we would undergo the report in terms of the audit. And then once we had identified the issues, we would be able to define the scope of work. And at that point in time, figure out how to address the issue of funding. And we didn't know if that would be a short-term or a long thing, but, you know, in the subsequent fiscal year. So that was our anticipation. Another option that's available to the commission is to say, Glenn, this looks like a lot of work. Let's just stop right here and not do anything more. We've delivered the audit report. We've delivered the regulations, which are the proof of concept. So the commission can, if they want, to sit on that for a while. But I'm also here with some exciting news tonight, which is a possible new opportunity. As it turns out, Mary Ellen was having a casual conversation in the hallway of Town Hall and explaining this issue and what were we going to do for the future. And the Economic Development Department has funds in their budget, and they said, we think this issue is important enough for the town that we are going to be able to devote some of our budgeted money to you for this work. So we are here tonight to suggest that if the commission likes the direction of the project and would like to proceed, funding is available. It's subject, as I understand it, to your vote and a concurring vote from the town council. That transaction or transfer of funds can take place. We can get started on the regulation updates forthwith. So got together with the committee, with Mary Ellen. We talked through the scope of work, what we anticipate is going to happen as part of this, budget figures and everything else together. And so I think we're ready to go to the next step if the commission would like to. The basic arrangement that we have agreed to is that we're going to proceed on an hourly basis not to exceed $45,000. $30,000 of that is for the regulatory work, and $15,000 of that is for meetings. There will need to be meetings with staff, with the regulations committee, and with this commission as we move through to adoption. We think the budget is adequate for the work that we want to do, but it may not fall neatly within those two buckets. So we've agreed that funding can be transferred between the sub-accounts if necessary. So if we're not spending all of our meeting and we'd like to undertake some additional technical work, we can do so. But I am committing to you, and have committed as part of the proposal, that for this budget, we're going to get an adopted set of regulations that meets our overall performance objectives. We don't anticipate seeing huge or major policy issues. We'll be working with the regulations committee. So if there are issues related to farm stands, and maybe we should require that the parking be set back so it doesn't obstruct the line. That's really not a major policy issue, and I think that we have the ability to bring that back to the commission and say, look, these are the changes that we have made. If we get into much bigger policy issues, whether it be, what did I say earlier, spaceports, and I think the introduction of new sections will be things we would want to come back to the commission to talk about. I think if the commission is comfortable, the council has been brought up to speed this issue, and I think we're potentially could be on their agenda for October So we're in a position to move ahead and could actually get started quickly. So I think that that's the overview, if you will, of where we've been, where we are, and possible next steps. And I'm happy and look forward to discussing this with you further tonight.
Okay, thanks, Glenn. Peter, if there's anything you want to add to this.
Well, first, I guess I just want to give credit to Caleb and my committee members. So why don't you guys weigh in? I talk too much anyway. So why don't you guys say what you think?
Sure. You want to lead off it, Joe?
Go ahead.
All right. So I think that, you know, we have spent some time on this over the past 6 or so months. And I with the initial intent to make this thing a little bit more user-friendly and flow and bring in some graphics that will help the end user, especially the layperson user, get to where they need to. And in the conversations that we've had both with staff and with Glenn over the course of this investigation, it's pretty clear that we scratched the surface onto something that is a little bit more systemic in its requirement of fix changes, to not necessarily changes, but to rearrange some of the things and address some of the concerns with how the regulations are written. Not necessarily with changing policy, like Glenn said, but making sure that we're addressing current laws or things to that nature. So I think that we're on a good spot here. If we wanted to stop, we would have a document that is flawed with some of the regulation that we have. However, it would have accomplished the goal that we've set out to do in making it a little more user-friendly, albeit not the best document because it does have some errors that we've uncovered. I think that that's the most important thing. And, you know, we can go on and I'll make my pitch on my end of it, at least, that I think it's important to not leave I don't like to leave an unfinished project. And I think that we have some work to do to get this done. I think that we now have it in sight. Now we know the scope of the problem, we know how to fix it, and we can carry the ball forward to do that with the blessing of the commission.
Yeah, maybe I could build on a little bit, Caleb. So I do agree. I think that the reskin definitely puts us in a little bit of a better position, but clearly not the finished product. What I would say is it's kind of a long time coming, you know, for us to take and really clean this up. Just sitting on the commission and going through that binder and really trying to follow along is a bear in and of itself. So I said kind of tongue in cheek, you know, if we do decide to kind of move this forward and end up with a better, more simplified project or product at the end of this, I would host the binder burning at my fire pit so everyone could come over, we'll grill. It'll be really nice to kind of move us into the future. But no, I think this is definitely a step in the right direction. I think we will get additional benefit from it and have a better product. I do think the benefit that came from really the economics committee as well is that this is an impediment even to folks trying to bring economic development to town. Is it really clear what we can and can't do? So not only does it benefit kind of normal residential folks and what they want to do on their land, I think it has a broader benefit to the town. So I think we should take advantage of it.
Peter?
Yeah, I think, first of all, I think the use of pictures, of colors, of click links, of things like that, the work thus far, I think is needed, and I would hopefully people like that. So I'm hoping that because in hearing you, when we kind of kicked this off, navigation and how do I get places, I think most people said you got to improve that. We have to improve it for residents. Heard that. Where do I start? What do I do? From Kat and from others in regards to that. So I think we clicked. I think we checked all those boxes per what the committee in theory wanted to see. And so I think for that was good. But I think the real meat of this is getting the regs better. And by better, I mean, well, if it says one thing in one place and it's contradicted somewhere else, that's not good. And in hearing from Mary Ellen and in hearing from Dave and hearing from Louis Pearl, that's kind of what we're talking about. That on a day-to-day basis, they see places of inconsistencies and things like that, that if you have a paper document that's 260 pages, that's really hard to navigate. It's really hard for commission members to navigate through. And so that sort of stuff, I think, to Joe's point, is a long time coming. And so I would advocate that we continue this. And I would also say, just going back in my old IT job from many years ago, I don't like going live twice, within 6 months of each other. So why put this in now when you're only going to have to put in something else after that? And I think, finish it, let's get it right. And we could work out the particulars of deliverables so that the commission is not set with, at the end of this, ready, set, go, approve the whole thing. No, we could work out interim ways of saying, here's what was uncovered, and kind of keep track so that we don't get, we kind of get a steady stream of, if there are changes to language, we don't committee just go off in random fashion, that we work out the communication vehicle so that everybody here is up to date about what we found and what we do. And we could certainly work that out. That's not an issue, because I don't want to, at the end of it, have a big surprise about stuff. That's no way to do that. So we'll have to work out interim communication and particulars. But I certainly think that in seeing and in working with this and uncovering some of the things, you could read the audit report as well. Glenn touched on some things here. There's enough meat there that I don't think we can leave it as is. I think there's definitely improvement need to, and I know Mary Ellen, you do it every day, and so it's not just us who do it. It's everyday work from Dave, from Mary Ellen, and from Louis to have a workable document, because that's what they live to. So I know, Mary Ellen, you wanted to say something as well.
You guys pretty much hit on everything I would.
Hey, Mary Ellen, you are not on
Have a
microphone
speaker.
right now.
Is it on?
Yep.
Hello?
There you go.
Hello? Okay, sorry. Closer. So yeah, I think you guys pretty much hit on anything that I would have, the major issues that I would have hit on. I think what I've seen the most is just the lack of consistency and clarity in it. I think it makes it very difficult for us to guide residents when you have perhaps Lou interpret something one way and I interpret another. The definitions, I think, are a little ambiguous and certainly could be updated to provide some more of that clarity. The uses, I think, as well. Some of them are not even in there. And I think these are just things that inherently cause problems. Sometimes these regulations get modified repeatedly by different authors, and the flow doesn't flow as well anymore. It references sections that no longer exist. So I just think overall there are a lot of issues, as Glenn pointed out, and I think this is a great opportunity to clean this up and make it much easier for all of the users.
Yeah. Thank you, Marianne. She hit on another point, which was, I think it also gives us pause. And someone comes to us with a regulation change, they will bring the section that they think applies. And if it seems reasonable, we are a reasonable group and say, okay. Yet there may be ramifications many pages down that we are not privy to or can reference or whatever. And that's how you get inconsistencies in language. And so I think if we have a better laid out set of regs, it will help us with those decisions and make that process a lot better as well. So thank you for saying that. So that's all I have, Mr. Chair, if others want to say something.
Commissioner Clark, yes.
I love the tabs and the tables especially. Those are the two of the things personally would help me out. I was given that binder, Joe, so I will be there too. And I think one of the important things when this does go to the council is to highlight ROI, return on investment, because this isn't a spend, it is an investment. It should probably be done on a regular basis so we don't get ourselves into this type of situation. But I think that definitely should be highlighted, because people don't really think, maybe someone will look at this and say, okay, well, that's a lot of pretty things, but do we need this? Do we really need to spend the money? And I think the answer is yes, because you need to improve, you're constantly be improving your processes, because what happens when you improve them and you make them streamlined is you're making things more efficient. You're making the people that are dealing with it more efficient. You're improving training new commissioners. A new commissioner gets voted in, they get handed a binder, don't know what to do with it. Going through this is very simple and easy, and they're ready to go on day one. Improves and saves time on training staff. When we bring new staff members, I'm sure they look at that and are very confused. Like Mary Ellen pointed out, it's causing frustration for our own citizens. Where do they go? How do they do things? You have it clearly laid out with flowcharts. It expedites business, moves things along faster. So it really is an investment to spend money on this. So I definitely want to highlight it's not a spend, it's an investment.
Okay, thanks, Jen. Commissioner Salka.
I agree with everything that's been said with regards to our current regulations and what's been presented tonight. What I don't want to see right now is that this stop here, do nothing, because my feeling is that this is going to gather dust on the shelf. And yes, we've spent a little bit of money, and it's been an eye opener of what improvements that we can see, which I am 100% in support of. I guess my only, and I guess it's concerned, we're spending taxpayers' money, no question about it. I'm not sure what the next step is with regards to financially. I understand the next step. Well, I'm not even sure what the total next step would be. We're looking at $45,000, and I'm just reading it in new opportunities. What is the end deliverable with the $45,000? Are we going to end up with a computer system that has been totally vetted, meaning taking what we have now, updated into the current regs and the current statutes, et cetera, and we have a fully working program, or whatever you want to call it, or is there more to come, number one? And number two is we are now getting into much more technical, where before we would just add a paragraph and we'd send out a sheet of paper and boom, we'd update it. Who is going to do that on a regular basis? Are we going to have IT involved? The town IT department involved? Because this is not something that, you type it up on a Word document and you insert it into the book. So I think there's going to be some ongoing costs that I think need to be identified. But I am 100% in moving forward with this thing, at least to the next step. But I would like to know what the end result is and what might be the total cost for this thing. I don't think $45,000 is going to be the total cost or the final cost. I think there's more to come.
So Glenn, do you want to respond to Commissioner
I'd love to,
Salka's?
yes. Thank you very much. I think I'm going to try to keep track of all of the points that you've raised. So if I miss anything, please redirect it to me. The audit section of this work costs $15,000. So the $45,000 is the remaining work to get an adopted set of regulations. So the grand total will be $60,000. There's two things which are not included in that. One of which is the commission, the town decides to do an independent legal review, which I would recommend. I've got quite a lot of experience doing regulations, but a fresh set of eyes looking at it is an important step forward. So I think the potential transfer from economic development to the Planning and Zoning Commission is greater than the amount of money that we have budgeted here. So there is funds left over for legal review. And if we don't spend all of the money, because we're going to be working on an hourly basis, then there's more money for that. If the commission says, we'd love a new binder, we'd like 238 printed colorful pages, the issue is we're not including printing. Most things are going online and digital these days, and that's the way I would suggest going forward. So printing is at cost. There's no markup. So if you say, yeah, we'd like copies for the commission, I'm happy to make that happen for you. The document itself is in Word. Everything is in Word. I produce it in PDF and deliver to you for your utility, but the background document in Word will be delivered to the town. As part of that turnover, I do a session, if you will, with staff, the people who get their fingers into the regulations and say, look, this is the way Word works and the way these regulations are set up. There's nothing wicked fancy in here. Word has powers beyond our knowledge in terms of what it'll do. But all of the internal click links are to headers in the regulation. We don't expect those headers to change. So if you add new stuff in, yeah, the number of pages increase, but the links all stay active. So it shouldn't require IT. I mean, some regulations around the country are HTML, web documents, and everything else. You can do that, but most town attorneys don't like that concept. They want to have a written set of regulations, and this is what it is. And we set it up to look like a booklet to provide that utility. So I feel comfortable saying to you that the end results of this work will be an adopted set of regulations. For that budget, I'm with you through to the end. When we start getting close to the budget limit, if we are, it's my job and Mary Ellen's job and Peter's job to manage that. So we get an adopted set of regulations. We're not going to get to a point with change orders. We do have flexibility. I don't think we're going to need all of that meeting budget money. But if we start having a lot of meetings, then we're going to chew that up. Our hope that we have talked about is that because we haven't chewed up that meeting money, we will have additional funds at the end for a legal review or policy issues that, don't ask me where spaceports came from, but if you want regs on spaceports, hopefully there's money at the end to do that. So that's the commitment that I'm making to you as part of this work. And I think the draft proposal to Mary Ellen and to the town indicates hourly not to exceed, adoption at the end. I think those are the key deliverables that I would want you to be aware of.
Thank you very much.
You all set? Any other commissioner have any comments or questions before I ask mine? I guess. Commissioner Volpe.
I'll keep mine brief because I feel like everyone said everything already, but I think the most important thing that was addressed tonight and why this should move forward is transparency and accessibility. I think accessibility is a real hurdle for us and for the public when it comes to understanding zoning regulations. And I do think it's a little convoluted right now, almost as if it does feel like it's working against me, the commissioner, like to find something quickly. So I do think it's necessary for that transparency and accessibility's sake. And I can see why our town departments would encourage that, right? To maybe streamline some of their work so that we don't get nuanced kind of conversations here on the commission of, why don't I understand this? And why doesn't this make sense? This feels like it will address some of that. And I think that that's really great and a worthy investment, like Commissioner Clark said.
Right. So my, first of all, I appreciate the time that the commission, the subcommittee has put into this. I think that this was an important thing. I know in talking to Peter over the years that it was important to him, and I'm glad that Caleb and Joe joined him in there, and I'm glad that Glenda, you were able to help them out, and thank you to town staff for their involvement, guidance, and input into that process as well. Before I talk about the broader things, let's talk a little bit about the process, right? So you're talking about a time and material contract not to exceed $45,000. You have a number of meetings that are listed in there, or dollar amount that's set aside for meetings. I think it was $15,000. That $45,000 is set aside for meetings. How many meetings do you envision for that dollar amount to occur? Number one, and number two, just so we're not coming back to you again, who do you anticipate meeting with specifically?
So I think, let me reverse my responses to you and get back to you. So I think internally, Planometrics will be going through the regulations, interpreting the language to make sure that I'm understanding what it is that you're trying to say. And then I'm going to try to restate it back in plain language, plain English, so that whether it's 8th grade or 6th grade, whatever it's going to be, the issue is this is what you can or cannot do. We're going to try to stay away from compound sentences and all of the other stuff. We're going to use a hierarchical organization. We're going to share this information with staff first. They're the guys on the front line. They get the phone calls, and I say, okay, I took the accessory structures out of definitions. I'm putting it here, and this is now what I think you're trying to say. Is this correct? No, we've never interpreted it that way. Wow. All right. How do you? And so we're going to work out those issues. Once we've worked out those issues, we're going to have a module, if you will, that we're going to go to the regulation. Is it committee or subcommittee?
Subcommittee.
We're going to go to the committee and we're going to talk through, this is now our proposed section on residential zones. And we're going to highlight issues that we think we need to talk to them. You may have noticed in the pages, I have a wide white space on the right-hand side of the page. That's an area that we are going to be using for comments as we keep going, keeping track of stuff. Work through it with the committee and say, okay, you know what? This is in fact a good presentation. We're going to come back and talk to the commission. So I would imagine maybe it's a 1-to-4 ratio or something like that. We're not going to be here with you guys monthly. We're going to have major milestones along the way where we feel we need your input. That will be based on the work of the regulation subcommittee, and that'll be based on the interactions with staff, based on our professional expertise. We're doing a flat hourly rate for all work on this project at $150 an hour, so that's 100 hours worth of meetings. So a
Right,
meeting tonight-
so I work with project managers. I am a certified project manager. 3 components of project management, right? Scope, schedule, budget.
Yep.
All too often, I find that the first 2 are paid attention to. What do I have to give and when do I have to give it? The last one, how much is it going to cost, becomes sort of an issue, right? That budget needs to be managed very closely, I find, in order to make sure that you all are making money, and we're not at the end of the line, and you saying, well, we still have a little bit more to go, and we're another $10,000 will get us there, and then we're down that rabbit hole. And you're professionals, I get, but I'm just expressing a little bit of a general sort of, that's where my natural focus goes to stuff like that. In terms of town statute, Mary Ellen, I'm sure that there's a threshold of what we have to put out for RFPs or RFQs, and somehow there's a way to sole source this, or I'm sure you looked into it. I'm not asking for a response. I'm just putting it out there because it certainly
talk
is a
to Mark,
concern
so
that we
we're-
talk about in my business when we work towns. I'll get to the policy things now. And I think the initial intent here was to make this a user-friendly document, right? I brought mine tonight. I don't usually carry it around because it is so big.
You're going to have to run home and get the fire pitch.
But I think that it can be confusing. I've learned over my 6 years here how to navigate it. I understand where to go, what to for, how to get there, how to find what I'm looking for. What I am surprised by is something that actually came up at our last meeting, is that there are conflicting regulations in there, which I won't get into, but they are there, and Peter knows about them as well. That in one section it says you could do this, and in another section it says, well, you shall do this, may do this, and it's like, well, which one is which, right? Which one supersedes the other? So I look forward to having that sort of cleanup being done. User-friendly, ADA compliance, right? I get the attractiveness of the colors. There are people in the world who do not see colors. And I know that when they do street signs, for example, that they take account for that by including shapes in there. So I'll just throw it out there that some accommodations should be made for those folks who are not attuned to seeing colors, and making sure that this is an ADA compliant document. And the big thing is major policy revisions. I don't want to see this become, and nor do I ever think I ever intended for this to become, a major policy wholesale redo of our regulations. And I'll use an example. You mentioned Public Act 2129. Very familiar with it. Part of 2129 included a provision to allow ADUs, accessory dwelling units, as a right. But it put it on planning and zoning and the chief legislative body of every town to embrace that or not. This town chose not to do that, and we took steps not to do that. I would not want to see because Public Act 2129 says it's a right, that all of a sudden we end up with a zoning regulation that says, hey, ADUs are right. So you need to be careful about that type of stuff. I just one final thing, and this is my pet peeve. My focus, as everybody on here probably knows, they hear way too much about this from me. Signs. I did the sign regulation several years ago. I want to see temporary signs, wire signs, be prohibited in town, but this is not the place to do that. The place to do that is by putting forth a zone text amendment for public hearing, for input and conversation amongst the group up here as well as the community. And to do that, we need to be careful not to allow that to happen. This is really a modification in my mind, or an adjustment of the current regulations to make them user friendly, make sure that if there is conflicting regulations there, that's brought to the attention, and that the body you see up here is the arbitrator of what is the proper reading on that.
Yep.
Not anybody else. Not, with all due respect to Mary Ellen or Lou Perillo, it's not on them, it's on us. We certainly take input and direction and recommendations and suggestions from them is very valuable. But at the end of the day, we seven are elected by this town per our ordinances and our constitution, if you will, in town, that's the way things happen. It's not done behind the scenes. So, and again, a lot of it is just putting it on the plate, but I'll finish where I started. I think everybody's done a great job. I think this is a worthwhile cause for all the reasons that it was mentioned. I think, it's money well spent, and I'm glad that Lou stepped up and offered, because when Mary Ellen brought this to me, my first question to her was, do we have the money? And she told me the story that you shared with us tonight. And, I think that it's a worthwhile effort. I am, the independent legal review, ask a barber if he needs a haircut, what's going to say, yes, you need a haircut, right? Ask a lawyer if you need an independent legal review, they're going to say, yeah, you need a legal review. I do think it's smart, however, in this case, but, I don't want to, I wouldn't want to see that the price tag gets out of control, or something where, someone up here, be me getting a call from someone saying, hey, by the way, why are we spending $25,000 on this independent legal review? And I'm going, I don't know, but anyways, again, thank you for your time. Thank you for your effort, Peter, and everybody else for their effort. And I look forward to this moving forward to that next step. And I certainly would support a motion to that end. And we'll ask for that in a second. But before we do, why don't we give you a chance, Glenn, to finish up here?
Mr. Chairman, you spoke eloquently about the fact that really our main goal here is a reorganization and clarification of what we've got in the regulations today. Because the commission has taken action on opt-out provisions, I'm going to take those and run with them and make sure that it's clearly stated in the regulation. There may be scenarios that we're going to suggest ideas for your consideration. For example, recently I've been working with towns on EV charging, and say, okay, well, hang on a second here. Our regs don't actually allow those, or they're not mentioned, or there's no requirement. So towns are starting to look at this issue, and based on my experience over the years, I may come to staff, to the committee, to the commission, and say, listen, I think if you want to do something about EV chargers, then you could do this. So is it policy? Yes, it is. Is it major policy? Maybe or maybe not, but that's your call. So my job, I think, is to provide the service to you that I can, so that we come out of this with a set of regulations that exceeds everybody's expectations. And we've set, I think, those expectations high in terms of what we've shown you here today. But that's also why I prepared the draft of the regulations, to show you that it would work. And the reason I was comfortable putting together the lump sum budget and saying we're going to get everything done for this is, as you pointed out, the primary purpose here is to reorganize what we have at the present time. So, Mr. Chairman,
Thank you, Glenn. Peter, bring us home for this part.
So thank you, Glenn. So I'm hoping everyone on the commission, for what you saw thus far in terms of look and feel and how things go, I'm hoping it met your expectations from where we were 6 months ago. So with that, I'm hoping that we're okay, because I don't want to move forward without that. Are we good with that sort of thing? I'm kind of saying that we're good with that. So good. So thank you for that. I think we're in agreement that anything that needs this commission's attention, we will bring it to this commission's attention at the next regularly scheduled meeting. And we committee members need to work out our cadence for how we do that. And I don't think that's a problem because we don't want to be on the hook for that. You guys decided that. I'm not, that ain't happening. So anything like that, we'll be sure, and we'll have to keep track of if we have inconsistencies, we just don't do them. We keep track of them to say, here's where we got, so that I think Christina's words are very apropos transparency, so that we all know what it is. So if we have to vote to adopt, we all know what we're adopting. And so there's no issue whatsoever with that sort of stuff. And I don't want to make major policy changes anyway. So unless we have to.
Yeah.
So,
I have some things, but I already talked.
well, we all have our own pet peeves, so I don't get there. So with that, I'd like to make a motion.
Yeah,
So let me first, I'd be regress if I did not thank Mary Ellen and Glenn for your efforts as well as Caleb and Joe. So just publicly thank you for everything that everybody does. So let me just begin with that. Second, I'd like to make a motion that we continue with phase 2 and bring forth to council the request for funds that were offered by economic development as defined in this meeting.
Second.
who seconded that?
Dick.
Okay, okay. Mary Ellen, does that language of that motion meet what you're looking for here, you think?
I do. The only thing I would maybe recommend is that you amend it to say as outlined in the scope provided by Planometrics.
Duly noted.
So
And I agree,
you
yes.
accept that
I
as a
accept that.
friendly-
Yes, I accept that.
And
Thank
and
you for
Nick,
that.
you accept that as a seconder, as a
Yep.
friendly amendment to the motion?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay,
I thought I had it all, but she,
well, that's why I circle back. You-
Yeah, she
you
knows
can't
better
keep
than
it
I
all.
do.
She's good at that kind of stuff.
It's plain language too.
We're working at being concise throughout.
yeah.
Is there any further
Thanks.
discussion on the motion that's in front of us? Seeing none, you want a roll call on this, Mary Ellen?
I think so.
Yep.
Commissioner
Yes.
Commissioner Volpe,
Yes.
Commissioner Clock,
Yes.
Commissioner Wolowski,
Yes.
Commissioner Santiago,
Yes.
Vice Chair Salka,
Yes.
Chair Hammersley.
Yes, 7-0, motion passes. Congratulations. Look forward to seeing you again soon. Good job, Peter, Joe, and Caleb. Keep up the good work, guys. As stated earlier, items 9B and 9C, I'm not going to read them. I'm looking for a motion to, can I table both of those under one motion, Mary Ellen, you think?
Yes.
That's okay?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we table SPR 1823, and we also table S1337.
Okay, we have a motion second.
Second.
Jessica with a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item 9D, Lori Jamel, is that correct? Okay, subdivision application for a 3-lot subdivision, property located at 1422 Marion Avenue, Zone R 2025. This is S1338. Mr. Ravino. I said, while you're getting ready, one of the things hanging out there on this one was word back from the Capital Region Council of Governments, CROG. Mary Ellen did receive a telephone call or talk to someone over there earlier today. They do have a draft opinion that this does not affect anything that they have on the books, so to speak. While it's not a formal opinion, we'll accept that for the purposes of moving this application forward tonight. So go ahead, Seth.
Yeah, I'm trying to. First set that did not recognize the UBS. There we go.
Correct.
Mr. Mr. Chairman, Commission members, Seth Bovino, planner with Kratzer Jones and Associates, represented the applicant for orientation purposes. North is up on the sheet. The north area is right here. Upson Place is on the south side, and the Marion Avenue is to the west of the property. The property is located at 1422 Marion Avenue, served by public water and septic systems. The property is zoned R2025. It contains 2.27 acres with an existing residence at the corner of Upson and Marion Avenue. The existing residence is right here. The proposal is to keep the existing house on one lot and create two additional lots. One with frontage on Marion Avenue, which is this lot right here, with frontage on Marion Avenue. The other from Upson Place, which is this lot right there on the southeast corner of the property. Lot number 3 is the largest lot because of the wetlands area. It contains 1.2 acres. The other two lots are meeting the regulation, meeting and exceeding the regulations in terms of lot area. We conducted soil testing on the property for septic systems. They were good testing. It's all sand and gravel. There's a little bit of a high water table, which we deal with a septic system design, with the details of that. We received wetlands approval, received health department approval, and water department also approved this proposal to encourage the water, groundwater recharge. We are directing the roof water from the homes to underground storage units. All the appropriate notes and details are shown on the plans. The homes' roof lines are facing south for solar gain. We received staff comments and responded to them in writing, revised the maps to address those comments. At this point, if you have any questions for me, we let discuss them.
All right, thank you, Seth. Can you just do me a favor? My understanding is that this property is on the National Register of Historic Places. Could you just speak to that, please?
Yeah, I was told by the person that's buying this property, they bought the property, they own it. The area is an historic district, but the house is not registered with the National Register. The property owners have the right to say to the government when they are approached, if they were approached, to say, no, I don't want to be on the register. And supposedly that's what happened here. But it is a historic district.
Are there any changes that are going to be made to the current structure that's out there? Any modifications?
We're not proposing any modification to the structure. They're going repaint it, replace the windows, the geometry of the windows most likely stays the same, but they're going to be new windows, and all the inside is going to be refreshed. The floor needs redone. They're going to leave the old white plank flooring, the beautiful staircases in the house. There's a deck in the back right here, a large deck with a roof on it. Basically the house stays the same.
Okay. Any questions of members of the commission? Commissioner Volpe?
So I have the National Register form on me, and it is a contributing structure. So you can individually list, and I will remind everyone that I have a master's in this, and this is what I do for my profession. So you can list individual National Register nominations, or you can create a historic district where there are contributing properties to the historical significance of the district. Now, I'll remind everyone that a National Register nomination doesn't actually protect anything. It's a blanket statement to recognize the significance. So you're correct that the property owners could do whatever they want with this parcel. But overall, for Southington significance, this is the James Upson House. It's an Indianite structure. It's an incredible building that definitely does need some love. But the Upson family is one of the founding families of Southington. This entire area should be protected and considered. If we had a historical commission in town, This is probably not something that would get approved for this area just because of the historical significance of the area. We're less than a minute from the Asa Root Tavern, one of the oldest buildings in the town. This is actually where so on your pin, that is the town of Southington, is the first bolt manufacturing building in America, and that is in this area. And the barn behind this house is also separately listed on the state register of historic places, which you can access online or via the State Historic Preservation Office. And that was an 1830s tinnery where they would make tin. So we don't have a historical commission. I can go on all night about why vinyl windows in a historic structure is a terrible investment. But we could talk about that separately if you want. But overall, I think when we're looking at this area, we have to be very careful about development in this area because it is one of the things that gives our town the character that it has. And it's one of the oldest sections of Southington. There's so many incredible buildings over there, and it's so beautiful to drive by it. I would just hate to see that facade that we have in Southington that makes people love those things about us to be diminished. So I worry about that, as you know, was probably coming from me. But overall, it does sound like there are responsible stewards for this property. So I'm not entirely in opposition, but I would like to assure that there's a continuance of communication with the town planning department. And further, I think this is a situation that recognizes that maybe some sort of historic preservation is needed in our regulations and in the community. I know a historical commission is a big task, but something that further outlines the importance of maybe not putting vinyl windows in an 1835 structure. So that's me beating my dead horse tonight, but thank you.
Thank you, Christina. Any other comments or questions from members of the commission? Nick?
I'm wondering, so it says the drainage report will be provided. Is this a concern of town engineers, Mr. Capone?
We did receive the report and we've reviewed it and it is consistent with the plan.
Okay.
Thank you.
You all set, Nick? Can I follow up that question? Just to get clarification, does your drainage report satisfy you and the steps that are being made to address drainage, storm runoff, and that type of stuff? Are you satisfied with what's been provided to you?
Yes, I am, Mr. Chairman. As Mr. Bravino indicated, the roof drain is taken out of the equation and put in the underground storage system. So it's just the area of the ways that are coming there, and there's no real impact on it.
Okay. Any other questions from members of the commission? Mary Ellen, does this application meet the regulations? It does. Are all your questions answered adequately? Mr. Capone, all your questions answered adequately to your satisfaction?
Yes, sir.
All right. Sev, anything to add?
I want to add, in regard to Commissioner Volpe, that's why the house has been preserved. And if we left that house without someone in there, it probably 20 years from now will be falling down and falling apart, and they will say, oh, well, it's really in bad shape, we got to remove it. Now there's an opportunity to have someone live in there and take care of it. I cannot tell you they're not going to put vinyl windows at the framing. That's all they do nowadays. I don't think they're going to spend the money to buy Pella wooden frame windows. There'll be, who knows, 30, 40 grand to do that. So that's where we are. But the architecture is beautiful. The bones are good. The basement needs concrete flooring. It's still dirt floor. So that impacts the house in terms of humidity and smell. There were dogs and cats everywhere that were not taken care of. So that needs to be done. So there's going to be a lot of work to be done to keep it up.
Yeah, some beautification. I think the TLC will go a long way here. So we appreciate that.
And the flower gardens, all the flowers that she had around the house are preserved. They're actually going to see more of that because they were kind of left unattended. You'll see all that. And yeah, it's going to look nice. As a matter of fact, if you drive by now, they already cleared this corner, like Jim Cropone requested an easement here, but they already cleared this area. It was really overgrown and it didn't look good at all.
All right. Any other comments from members of the commission? Peter?
I guess the only other thing, thank you for the clarification regarding the structure. Because this is a subdivision application, not a special permit. So, as you just said, Mr. Chair, if they're within reg, we're bound by statute to say it's okay. But I appreciate what you're saying about the existing structure and trying to do all that. Not that we have jurisdiction over any of that, but I do appreciate the effort being made there within stuff because of the type of structure that it is.
I mean, this is off the subject, but if we want to preserve the sites, not just the house, the sites.
Right.
Okay, a house has 10 acres of land.
Yeah,
You can't prevent that unless
you buy it.
you change the regulation. If there's a house from 1880, you cannot subdivide it. I mean, unless you make that change, it's going
Well,
to continue.
it's food for thought though.
It's not how it typically goes. I'd rather see some sort of historical,
Preservation or
Yeah,
something.
something.
Yeah, right. No, I hear you. I hear you.
for at least like these districts, but
Yeah,
that's
We
it.
digress. Let's-
Other thing, yeah.
By the
So-
way, the homes will be colonial style, not the old colonial style, but the current colonial style.
Well, yeah. Not 1700 colonial style. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, I'm good.
Any other comments before we get a motion? Let's get a motion on this one.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion, we approve S138.
Do you have a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
Basically, Mr. Chairman, this meets the regulations. The staff seems to be satisfied with the way it was presented. So I have no reason to reason to deny this application.
All right. Anything else?
No,
Mary Ellen, can you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Tedesco?
I abstain.
Commissioner Volpe?
Yes.
Commissioner Clock?
Yes.
Commissioner Wolowski?
Yes.
Commissioner Santiago?
Yes.
Vice Chair Salka?
Yes.
Chair Hammersley?
There is a yes. Motion passes 6-0. Thank you, Sev. Moving on to item 9E, release of a $3,350 subdivision. Phase 1 bond, Lovely Development Incorporated, property located at 300 Welch Road. This is S1327. Jim, is this ready to go?
Ready for action, Mr. Chairman?
Okay. Can we get a motion?
Make a motion, we approve S1327.
Commissioner Salka, a second.
Second.
Wolowski with a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 9F, release of a $2,500 ENS bond, Connex LLC, property located at 161 Birch Street, SPR 1768. Jim, is this ready to go?
Ready for action, yes.
All right. Can we get a motion on this?
Mr. Chairman, make a motion, we approve SPR 1768.
Second?
Second.
Tedesco with a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. 9G, release of a 9,120 ENS bond, DRA Eden Avenue LLC, property located at 33 Eden Avenue, SPR 1711.1. Jim, is this ready to go?
Ready for action.
Okay. Can we get a motion?
Mr. Chairman, make a motion, we approve SPR 1711.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second?
Commissioner Clark with a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 10, anything, I have something about anything else? Mary? Look like you're gonna-
I didn't originally have it, but Jim did clarify yesterday that the corridor study, the Route 229 corridor study is complete. And it's posted on Naugatuck Valley's website. I haven't had a chance to look at it. We just found out it was finalized, but it's on there if you guys want to take a look at it.
Excellent. Did they give a presentation to the town council on that one, I thought? Yeah?
They had several design charrettes, I'll call them, at different locations, one in New Britain, one in Bristol, I think it was. I forget exactly where, but we're actually looking for a funding mechanism to make those events happen. So that's where we're at right now.
Excellent. Love to see that stuff not collect dust. Mary Ellen, is it possible to link up on your website, work with IT, just to
Yeah,
to
I'm sure we can.
even send it over to Naugatuck Valley or wherever it might be, just to make it a little bit more easy,
Yeah,
user-friendly type of stuff? That'd be great if you could do that.
Yeah.
Anything else from anybody before I talk for a second? Those of you who've been with us throughout the summer heard me say this. The affordable housing plan that we adopted in, I think it was in May, we adopted it. I've asked everybody to take time and take a look at that and come back, be prepared to come back sometime later this year with a set of recommendations or thoughts, and we'll put an agenda item there. I'm going to set the second meeting in October, which is October 18th, to have that conversation. So if you go, it gives you about a month. If you all can just take some time, look at it, and again, the intent is to weigh in a little bit first blush here. What types of things do you think are there that you'd like to see? If there's something there that's not included, if you want to talk about it, I want to do that. And the intent here again is to take some action with regard to affordable housing in our town and be proactive before people get proactive on us, if you will. And we've seen how that goes, and it's not necessarily the best feeling in the world. So I want to make sure that we continue to take steps and focus on that. So please be prepared to come back on at our next meeting on the 18th. And Mary Ellen, please make sure you put an agenda on that agenda, probably at the latter part of the meeting, just so we don't,
Good idea.
or the people who might be here for applications with our pontifications. Our next meeting is scheduled for October 4th. And I think that probably sometime in October, we should be adopting a new meeting schedule for 2023. So Mary Ellen, another agenda item that we'll need to put out there on that. I assume and would propose probably that it maintain the same schedule we have, which is first and third Tuesdays of the month, with the exceptions of July and August and December. And probably next year in November too, because there's a municipal election going on. So we probably don't have one the first week in November next year. But
There's a thought.
with that, Apple Harvest Fest is coming up, everybody. So make sure you all get out there and enjoy the times there. It's the biggest single event in our town. So we all look forward to that time. Item number 11, we have a couple items out there. They've gotten some press lately. Obviously, they're significant items, one of which we acted on in terms of a site or a zone text change already. And the other one is a medical building proposed by Sterling Physicians, if you're familiar with them. But that's a consortium of physicians that it's like Hartford Healthcare. They all work together. So, but they're proposing a rather significant building out on West Street. So.
Wow.
It's just before Cumberland Farms on that side of the street, I think, even. So, but with that, if there's nothing else, can we get a motion?
Mr. Chairman, just a
Mr.
quick.
Soka, yeah.
The review of the affordable housing, you said October what? What was the date?
It's October 18th.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
No problem.
Make a motion to adjourn, Mr. Chairman?
We have a motion. We have a second.
Second.
Jessica with a second. Any questions, comments? No? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, folks.
Chance to visit Barnes during